I did my research project on cognition, learning, and video games. Basically the interaction between how we think, how we learn, and the kinds of games we play with electronic media. Learning is a process that occurs in the brain by which the brain changes shape to better recognize a repeated stimulus. This usually occurs over time, and with exposure to the same stimulus, we become better able to recognize these stimuli as they are presented to us. A way that we test for learning is we perform textural discrimination tasks to gauge how quickly they can respond, and over time their responses become faster, and the period between the stimulus and the mask decreases until people can no longer recognize when a stimulus occurs. So in the bottom left, we have the start of the trial. You have to fix your eyes at the center of the screen so that you're paying attention to a letter. And then you click to start, the stimulus comes at you. There's a brief period before the mask to kind of make sure there's not any imprint on your eyes that you can then think about and conclude whether or not there was a textual discrimination in the task in the slide that you just saw. An interesting thing to note is that real-time strategy games sort of look like these textual discrimination tasks. The interesting thing is players in these real-time strategy games are actually managing their armies, and a lot of the times they're micromanaging small units in a large battle and using very highly advanced cognitive processes in conjunction with their vision. And it's actually been found that in studies where experienced, regular, real-time strategy game players were exposed to these textual discrimination tasks, they actually had an area of their brain connected close to the front of their frontal hemisphere, which is associated with more complex thought. It was actually connected to their visual cortex when they were presented with these tasks, and they picked up the tasks a lot quicker than those who had no experience with real-time strategy games. This brings me to another topic of interest, which is action games, and how they kind of affect our learning. So, action games, there's a lot going on. You have to focus on where the enemy might be, where he could be, where he's going to pop out from, how much ammo you have, just a whole bunch of stuff that you need to pay attention to or not pay attention to. And what they found in experiments done by Green and Bavalier and another person called Vikrant, they found that action gamers actually had developed an ability to disentangle unnecessary noise, basically information that wasn't relevant to learning the task at hand, and they could filter out only the necessary information to learn things quicker. So, for example, in the textual discriminations, they picked up, they had quicker response times and accuracies over time than those who did not play action video games. So that's an interesting thing. It seems as though action video game players are able to pick up new tasks quicker than those who don't play any action video games. And the same people who did the experiments, or who did the study and found this result, actually conducted an experiment where they had people who had never really played games before, and they split them into two groups. In one group they played action video games, and in the other group they played a life simulation game, like The Sims. And what they found was after 9 weeks and 50 hours of playing action video games or playing The Sims, they found that the ones who played action video games actually had developed a better ability to pick up on these learning tasks, which had a lot to do with attentional control and filtering out information, as well as impulsivity and sustained attention, meaning they were able to focus for longer and control their impulses with quicker response times. So that brings me to video games and education. Um, when people have higher cognitive skills, it's easier for them to pick up on new things. And in education, that's what we're trying to get done. We're trying to get kids to learn things, and even adults to learn new things, new tasks, and new information, and form concepts about them. Now, education can be pretty boring. It can be, doesn't have to be, but a lot of the time sitting at a desk, kind of not having a lot of fun, just kind of listening to a teacher or not listening, as could be the case. It's hard to feel engaged sometimes in traditional academic settings. But most of the time when people are playing games, they're having a fun time and they're fully engaged in the task that they're engaging in. So as you can see, fun, kids having fun, kids not having fun. What makes games effective for education? Well, video games have a number of things that help them be effective tools for education. One is that people don't play games because they want to gain something from them. Most of the time. You can, as is the case with soccer player number 1. He's playing for a trophy, but soccer player number 2, he's just playing because he loves the game. And video games, that's why people play them most of the time, because they just love to play the game. And when people are intrinsically motivated, they just love to do it because they like to do it, they find more enjoyment, purpose, they have greater curiosity and passion. It's a form of self-expression. But when people are trying to do something for an outcome, they're trying to get that trophy, trying to get that paycheck, they're aiming for something outside of themselves, and they're trying to win. They're looking at the bonuses, the pay raises. It's not as much of a learning process so much as it is a getting something process. Another thing that makes video games effective for education is that in video games, most of the time, you're expected to fail. It's not exactly the most fun if you beat a game the first time you try it easily. People like to have a challenge when they play video games. And something that our current educational system kind of emphasizes is that failure is something to be avoided. You want to do your best to not fail and succeed the first time, or set yourself up for success, but most of the time, failure in our traditional educational settings are high consequence, and they can impact your future, taken to the extreme end of it. But with video games, failure is expected, and through the process of failure, you actually learn until you reach success. That's what this little slide is about: failure, learning, success. And they've actually a researcher named Anderson got together with colleagues, and he explored using video games to teach children about cell biology. And for a lot of the children, they struggled with the game, they had a hard time, but after failing, they eventually succeeded. And what he found was that those who failed the most eventually had the greatest amount of learning at a post-trial assessment. So the concept of productive failure really, video games really inherently have that most of the time, in that you mess up a lot of times before you get better and eventually master whatever game you're trying to play. So I believe that these benefits could really help educate the future. I think that video games provide an excellent environment for students to engage because they want to, not because they're trying to get something, and give them opportunities to try out new things, to fail, and eventually to learn and succeed. So that's why I believe that video games have a great potential to add to our society and our educational system. And with the advancements in technology, we can develop better and better ways to help people learn faster and faster, and to make it more enjoyable for them. So, as with the seasons, all things change. We are entering into the future every day, and I hope that video games will be seen as valuable educational tools for anyone who's interested in just learning new things. That's my slide. Thanks for listening. I'm gonna quit this. Yeah.